I was developing another script with Scott Free that I'd been working on with Liza Marshall. She mentioned that there was a big TV project they were doing that kind of might be of interest to me. It had a supernatural element and it had a medieval element. Ridley Scott and Scott Free and Liza Marshall, the producer, had seen Black Death and really liked it. So they knew that I had a very good handle on the kind of medieval side. So I just read the script. I'd read the book. I really loved the idea of the story, the idea of two timelines, a story that's in the modern, and an idea that the modern story somehow uncovers these mysteries of this past story. And weirdly, I just made the movie before I made Black Death. I'd made the film Triangle, which was dealing with kind of multiple timelines. So this idea of a structural story that operates, in the modern and in the 12th and the 13th century was something that I was really drawn to. My vision for the project was that the modern story needed to be very much a clue-find story. The idea of, and I think I used the metaphor of the past must invade the modern story, so that as the modern story is unfolding, episodes, the things that we see in the past story start to gradually inform the present, so that the two worlds collide. And that was kind of in the book, very much so. But the book obviously is, it's a long book, and so. And in literature, obviously, it's a completely different medium. So we had to find a way of taking what's in the book and feeding it into essentially how I saw the thing is that the modern story is like a thriller, and all thrillers are pieces of the puzzle that keep unfolding as the story unfolds. So that was very much my, if you like, central idea of how I wanted to construct the story. This isn't a movie that's like a documentary. I'm not making it it's not a social realist film. It's just that I like to look at what would really happen in a scene. So if a man is strangled, how long would he be strangled for him to die, and what would that look like? And I don't want to soften around the edges. And I think that we have a perception of what the medieval times were like, and that perception, I think if you go against that perception, certainly with medieval films, mostly anything medieval, as soon as you put swords, everything becomes fantasy, and I've never really been into fantasy movies. I'm very interested in to say, well, what would warfare be like in medieval days? What would it be like when you're on the battlefield? And we imagine that 800 years people stopped being, acting like human beings, and obviously they didn't. 800 years ago, the guys were just as scared as they were on Normandy beaches when they're going for these invasions, and I wanted there to be. And it was very much my idea for how I shot the fights, was it would have the quality of a kind of Saving Private Ryan. It would be shot in a manner which shows the men hiding from the arrows and being scared and seeing their friends being gunned down around them. It's just trying to balance a commercial project, which is what Labyrinth is, with a realistic edge, so that the scenes, certainly the medieval scenes, don't for me feel like scenes you've seen before in medieval times. They feel very realistic, and the characters are dirty, the actors are muddy. They don't have the conventional LA smile with their blue teeth. They're all a bit grubbed down, and I think the whole world feels a bit more, grubby, sexy, and more realistic. Usually, the films suffer from heavily choreographed dances, if you like, that are choreographed, where two men with a sword, cling clong, cling clong, cling clong, one of them gets killed. And then on bigger ones with bigger scope, it's the same again, and more of them get killed. And it's just boring. And I really, from the get-go, wanted the battle scenes to have a sense of a modern immediacy, so this feels like how war would be. It was a war at the time, and what are wars like? Well, the men are scared, and the battles are bloody, and they're vicious. One of the great things about Eamon Elliott, who's playing Guillaume Demas, is that he's a very good physical actor. So we were doing long tracking shots where the men are really sword fighting at full speed, and there's no edits in it. And so the only way you can do that is to have an actor that can actually do it at that speed. And you'll see when you see the film. To me, they're one story, and they're just separated by a time. And so sometimes we'll be in the modern story, and the camera will pan off, and suddenly we're into the past, and there's no cut. So what we would do is have a modern scene and a medieval scene set up side by side, and we just pan the camera from one to the other, just to show the idea that 800 years may seem a lot in the life of a human being, but you put it up against the whole time of the universe, it's nothing. So people haven't changed in 800 years. The general human reactions to love and to violence and to fear and all those things are the same. And I wanted to try and show these two timelines that actually, in a depressing way, not a whole lot has changed between now and 800 years ago in terms of the religious wars that are going on and everything else that we live through on the news is in this film in a kind of, you know, a fantasy story, if you like. So whenever I like something in a take, I laugh if it's good, and because I know it's good, it makes me happy, so I laugh. And obviously that could be a comedy moment, it could be a death scene, it could be a decapitation scene. If I know it's a good movie moment, I kind of laugh. It's great for actors; they have to get used to it. It's very hard for the girl that played Bertrand, who's only 6 years old, because when I would laugh at something that was a serious scene, she'd think I was laughing at her instead of how good the scene is. I don't know. It's because I get so into it. I've always been so into movies that when I watch a scene play out, if it's good, I get excited. On this film, I worked with John Lynch before and Eamon Elliott before, both on Black Death. And I just knew, you know, I called up John. I said, I'd love you to do this role. I'd love John Lynch as an actor, and it'd be great to have him play de Montfort. I knew he would bring a real darkness, sense of fun to it. And then with Eamon, I really wanted the Guillaume Dumas character. I felt like Eamon only had a small part in Black Death, but I knew straight away that one, he's a great actor, and two, he's a tremendous sword fighter. Even then, it was his first movie with a sword. You could tell he has a very good ability, a spatial awareness. If you give me a sword, I wouldn't feel confident to slice through people because I'd never know where my body is. You probably can see the way I'm moving in this interview. But he is he's probably very good at football. He's very precise. So I knew that I would have wanted to bring a kind of character that could play Guillaume Dumas, who could potentially be quite a wet character and quite an annoying character, but to not be, to bring a kind of a real manly quality to it, and yet also be able to do these terrific fight scenes. When we knew that John Hurt was involved, you know, it was I was doing backflips. John Hurt's a hero of mine, and getting the chance to work with someone like John was, you know, when someone said, well, maybe John Hurt for Aldrich, and it was of course, and it was a no-brainer. So that was John, and then the casting of the two girls, Alaïs and Alice. Jessica Brown Finley came in for Alaïs, and literally, as soon as I saw her and spoke to her, saw her audition, she had the part. It was just straight down the line. She's just brilliant. And I thought she looked perfect, has this amazing ethereal beauty. She's beautiful, naturally beautiful. And she also has this amazing grace and this kind of ethereal beauty simultaneously. She's got the whole package. She's very, very, very lucky. And she's, yeah, and a great actress as well, and to boot. So that was a no-brainer. And then with the role of Alice, I met, Vanessa came in, and I loved Vanessa straight away. And we had this kind of process of, did we want to have two characters that look alike? Did we want to go that way? So because I'd already made my mind up on who Alice was going to be, on who Alaïs was going to be, we ended up having to really think about whether we should cast a brunette. You know, I know obviously it's a superficial concern, but these two don't look like each other. And in the book, that was a big thing. So I just was very keen to dismiss that and say what Alice needs to be is someone who is intelligent, has an inquisitive brain. The character is someone who is trying to uncover a puzzle. And as soon as I met Vanessa, she's so like that character. I just so as I carry on looking for other girls who are, just see if we meet some more people, because I wasn't totally sure about the physicality of her looking different. But the more I looked through the kind of, the book of faces, if you like, of the other actresses that could have played that part, the more I realised that we'd already found her. We found her on I think she was the first person to come in for Alice. Our amazing designer, Tom Hannum, just built us a whole village in the back lot, which I actually, be honest, I had real fear that it wouldn't look right, because sets and sound stages are notoriously look too clean and they look fake. And you see loads of shows where they've built this backlot and it looks just rubbish because they get all the little details wrong, everything's too clean, and often the mistake people make is when they film it, they show everything, they do the big pan up to show the rooftops, and if you were really in a medieval village, you wouldn't do that. You would just walk down the streets and film it and not think about it. So Tom built us the most impressive set, and then we filmed it as though we were really in Carcassonne, which means we're not going to try and show the set off. You got such an amazing big set that we can turn the camera any way we want and it's set. And you won't even think it's set because we did a week's filming in France first, so that many of the, often, you know, in a sequence you may be cutting from set to reel to set to reel to set to reel. And because there's no way the real shots are possible to do in a studio, they're too big, you assume everything's in the real place. My job as the director is not only to direct the actors, but also to make sure the extras are not just, you know, standing around doing nothing, doing something that looks false. Now, the worst kind of extra sphere, the things you would see where the bad extra would be, medieval times, we start, there's a juggler. That would be a terrible idea. Or we're in a pub and two glasses clink together and then we're into the pub scene. These are all these kind of terrible ideas you see in any kind of historical thing, and it's avoid that. If you actually walk down the street and look what people do in the street, mostly they're just sat around, they're walking, they're not doing anything. But when you watch medieval films, everyone's sawing, everyone's hammering, but just don't do that. And what we had with ours was made them all feel very, you know, a guy might be walking with a bag we just kept it all very minimal. And I think it means that you don't look at them and then your attention is only on the actors. This is just a cracking, brilliant kind of yarn. It's a great story. It's beautifully shot. It's brilliantly acted, genuinely, and it's sexy and very, very violent and very, very cool, I think. And so, I think when you see the trailer, the film is better than the trailer, and the trailer is brilliant. So I'm very confident about it. Yeah.